I don't think you get to see this kind of thing in America very frequently.
Well, I was hoping to see a substation. Oh, yay!
Welcome everybody. We're starting our Now We Adventure this week in Peabody, and this is the parking lot you might want to start at. So this is where, Jesse? This is right at what's called the Northshore Mall up here in Massachusetts. It's actually a little bit outside of the Northshore Mall proper. It's at the Leahy Medical Center. So there's a Tesla store and lots of other things at the mall. So, you know, you could get a bunch of fun stuff before you start your trip. But we decided to start down by the Leahy Medical Center. It's right at the start of the Peabody Independence Greenway. So where are we headed on this trip? In this episode, we're going to be headed kind of all over the North Shore. We're going from Peabody to Danvers, a little bit of Wenham to Topsfield, and I think we're going to finally make it just about to Georgetown before we start heading back. So I think we're going to, hit a bit of Boxford, lots of different towns in Massachusetts that you might not end up going to just because they might be, right along some major routes that you might just skip the town entirely. And it's a really pretty route. I think we had a really good time, and there's a lot of cool stopover spots that we stopped at. So let's get right into it. So kicking off here, you can see the Leahy Medical Center. And I don't know if you're allowed to park here, but worst case, you could just park up at the mall. There was plenty of parking spaces around, so I didn't feel too bad. I don't think that if anyone had an appointment that day that they were going to not be able to park just because we did. And what you're going to notice on this trip, as opposed to our very first episode, is that we learned that the speed ramp that we're using no longer will go as fast as it did. I think this is a nice speed. Even though it's fast, at least you get to take in kind of all the details. It's a 10x time-lapse speed, so if we were going 10 miles an hour, it'll look like we're going 100 miles an hour. But of course, I think usually we're going about 15, so it should look like you're going 150 miles an hour down this bike trail. So we start off and it's asphalt, and of course right there you saw us having to cross a pretty complicated intersection, which worried me on the trip. I was like, if this is what we're going to encounter every couple blocks, but we didn't. So that was good. And this was a pretty busy trail. There was lots of people walking their dogs and stuff like that. It was a really well-kept trail in terms of the asphalt. Not too wide. I would have loved it if it had gotten a little bit wider. Here we had to kind of end that rail trail and head over to the next one. I found this route through a cemetery. We weren't disturbing any souls, I hope, and we saw some other bikers making the same cut through. And this kind of worried me here because this is a really busy route, and unfortunately if you're with a family, young kids and stuff, it would be kind of tricky. But if you're adults, I think it should be fine. That particular spot, as we were going right under that bridge, is a very narrow walkway, so that was a little bit sketchy, but it was nice. We had protected crossings, so that was pretty good. So you saw us getting on the Danvers Rail Trail, and now it's hardpack. This is hardpack sand. We're going to talk a little bit about it.
So you probably don't want to look that way because there's a Walmart right there, but this is pretty nice. So we're on the Danvers Rail Trail, and this is kind of a, very relaxing ride so far.
Yeah, so this is all hardpack. Basically, as soon as we got on it, we did a long trip onto the highway. Really pretty so far, and we should be getting kind of further away from civilization as we keep going north. So
nice.
I'm excited to see how it goes.
Okay.
So you can see we're kind of in suburbia here. We're just going behind some Walmarts and behind people's houses. But it's nice because normally you can't really ride a bike through these communities safely. Yeah, and you saw us going over like an old train trestle. So this was an old rail line. There used to be trains, going to and fro down this way. And now there's bikes. It was really nice. For everyone who would say like, oh, I can't believe you're riding through such a, built up area. It's a nice way to get out of that area. And it very quickly turns into really, pretty suburbia. There's always a nice little gap between kind of civilization and this rail trail. It was very pretty the whole ride. We had a beautiful day. I think it was in like August. And it was a really nice little ride. And as we were riding along, we saw some signs that were directed to the actual bike trail for a fish market.
Fish market. So I don't know what they got inside. Should we go look?
I don't know if we have time.
All right. But anyway, there is a fish market right on the trail. So you have a spot to park your bike. You got some picnic tables.
And there's been a lot of fix-it stations.
Yeah.
Pump stations.
And so on our way in, we saw a lobster, so it usually means you can get a lobster roll. So knock on wood that that's the case. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, so now we're going through kind of downtown Danvers. And again, you have to cross a couple streets here. Not a big deal. Nice crosswalks. And then you're back kind of behind people's houses again. Yeah, this was a pretty, residential area, and you're just behind lots of people's backyards. Still, again, a pretty good separation. Lots of folks, going for a walk. I feel like if you lived near here, this would be a really nice way to kind of get around on a bike or walking around. And again, the conditions were really good. It was a nice, well-kept trail, hard pack, and we were cruising along. Yeah, at the height of summer, you can tell whether a trail is taken care of or not because things are kind of overgrown, and this wasn't too bad. And then we came up on this park.
So Jesse, look, there's free sunscreen.
Yeah, and a nice park with a cute little bridge.
Yeah.
Really nice part of the trail.
This has all been hard pack, which is kind of nice because on these fat tire bikes, it keeps I think it keeps the traffic down, so to speak. But if you have a thin tire bike, I'm not sure if you'd enjoy that part of the ride.
Right.
So now we're sort of headed out of Danvers, which is a pretty big town, headed into a little bit more of the woods. And so what we're getting into now is the Danvers Wenham Swamp Walk. And there's what looks to be a really nice boardwalk trail that kind of offshoots from here. We're coming up to the entrance of it now. And I don't know if it's necessarily perfect for bikes, but it would definitely be a very fun walk. And you probably could even park your bike and take the walk because it doesn't look that long either. Really beautiful. You're going through some marsh that cars don't get to go through. You don't get to drive through this at all. And we're about to come up to my favorite part of the trip here. So as we crossed over this, you knew this area because you'd been here once before. Not on a bike though, right? You had walked it. And so this is a canal. And so you're going to check this out. I think you're going to really enjoy this part. So this canal was built that you're about to see. It's the Salem-Beverly Waterway Canal, and it was built in 1917. And its job was to provide water for Beverly, Massachusetts and Salem, Massachusetts. And basically, the state government gave this new commission they made, permission to take water from the river and basically pump it down to these towns.
Well, I would say that this is a pretty worthy detour.
Yeah, that's great that you found this on the map.
It's probably, what is that, like 100 feet
Yeah.
off of the main path, and you get this amazing, I don't think you get to see this kind of thing in America very frequently. Straight as an arrow canal with nothing on either side of it. It's just...
It looks like we're in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it really has that kind of Netherlands Dutch kind of look, and it'd be fun to take a canoe on that.
Yeah, it would. And
I don't think you're supposed to. I think it's public water supply, but
another good reason to have a fat tire bike because again, the little offshoots here are a little bit muddy at times.
Yeah.
And so this bridge that we're on, I think was built in 1974 when they widened this canal and put gravel walkways on either side. So, and again, this is like a fun little offshoot adventure you could do where you could either walk it or bike it. Yeah, the walkway takes you all the way to Wenham, which would then only be about less than a mile's bike on some roads to the Wenham Museum, which I've never been to, but I really want to go. It's a model train museum. So officially we're in Topsfield right now, and it's a tiny town census-wise. There's like 6,500 people here. And again, it's one of those towns, there's 351 towns in Massachusetts, and it's one of those towns that unless you go to the Topsfield Fair, which is I think how most people know it, you don't find yourself here very often. But it's a really cute little town. And Jesse, I lied. That was actually a fun spot, but then you took us to another fun spot coming up on this trip. So you had been a member of the Audubon Society here in Massachusetts and had gone to a bunch of different cool places. One of them is here in Ipswich. And so you're taking us kind of off the route for a second to go up to this Audubon Society. Tell us about that. Yeah, so I went here during COVID because, obviously you can't go where people are. So you go to the Audubon Society. It's kind of a really magical place for me because when we went, we noticed that birds were following us as we walked around this immaculate, beautiful piece of land. And then we came back, we brought birdseed, and they would actually land on your hand to snatch the birdseed out. So it's a really nice little spot. There is a bathroom, although it was closed the day that we went. I think it is since reopened. So you have a nice little bathroom. You have a little store.
There's picnic tables.
There's picnic tables. They sell a little bit of drinks and some snacks. And you do have to pay for parking if you drove there in a car, but we took bikes, so that was free. Or you can, of course, get an Audubon membership.
So how much was your membership?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was about $30 or $65.
And then how much to park?
Parking, I believe, is $5 for the day. Basically, you go in, you tell them that you're parking, and they'll charge you, and you'll put a little thing in your windshield.
And that's if you don't have a membership.
That's if you don't have a membership. If you have a membership, you get to park there for free, along with lots of other places in Massachusetts.
So it was a kind of an uphill ride on the way there and downhill on the way back.
Yes.
This is a little busy and scary here because there's not much shoulder, and then we're back on the path.
Yes. Yeah, so it's definitely off the beaten trail. It's not the easiest thing to get to, and it was a little bit windy to get there with not a lot of shoulder. So it was...
And we're going right by the Topsfield Fairgrounds, which is the way most people know this town.
So if you wanted to skip, the nightmare of parking at the Topsfield Fair, maybe you park in Peabody and bike there.
Except it's in October, so it's going to be a lot colder. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so you have to cross kind of a busy road, and there wasn't that much protection, so that was a little bit sketchy. But then we ride a little bit further, and we come to this very interesting parking lot, which incorporated the rail trail into itself.
Yeah, this would be a good place to pick up the rail trail.
Yeah. This is sort of right in the center of Topsfield. Here we were looking for a place to grab some lunch.
And we found a place.
Yes. So, some pretty building over there that used to be part of the railway network. And then, we found a nice place to have lunch. It was pretty good. Then after lunch, we headed off again. And throughout this thing, we didn't really capture it that well. There is a model solar system. So to scale, you'll have the sun and then several planets. And it's pretty far away. Some of this stuff gets pretty far away because we're talking about, some stellar distances.
If you spot them, put down in the comments which planets you spotted.
And so here the trail is taking a bit of a turn for the worse. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about this on another video, another trip that we went on, where we actually started right where we had lunch in Topsfield, and we made it all the way to Newburyport. So definitely subscribe if you want to check out that video, because it was a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, that was like a jungle expedition.
Absolutely. But luckily we didn't run into too much trouble on this part of the trail. So as we've started riding up and out of Topsfield, the conditions have changed again. So instead of being hard pack, this is much more trail, power line trail, I suppose you could call it, or a small power line trail. This definitely was once a railway, and they had, I guess, these telephone lines.
Perfect again for fat tire bikes.
Yeah, I would say that most other bikes besides mountain bikes are going to have trouble. So this is really pleasant because we're still getting a lot of nature.
Yeah, you get the mottled shade and sun, which is really nice.
Yeah. So we'll keep going. We'll see if anything changes. So now that we're leaving Topsfield, we're going to be going through a couple of different places, and our final destination was going to be Georgetown, Massachusetts, which is a place that I don't think that I have even really driven through because it's just kind of off the beaten path. So here's an interesting part. You're like, why did you guys get off of the rail trail? And the reason for that is because we have to cross 95, which is a major highway, 6-lane highway. We weren't really going to just kind of look both ways and cross on the bikes. So we found this route that goes around. And this is kind of a killer for me. It's a fine enough route. It's kind of a nice slow path because it's so windy. But again, the problem with that is that, if cars are going to be coming around corners and stuff on this windy road, they might not see you, and that makes it a little bit dangerous for a bike.
Especially for families with kids.
Yes. Again, I'm an adult, so I might direct my bike directly off of the road into a bunch of brambles. Kids might not do that. And again, here we are going through like a major road to get back to the trail.
All right, so that section was on road, which I typically don't like, but that was a really pretty nice back route.
Yeah, it was really quiet.
Very quiet. We went over 95, so I think that's definitely the route to go for until they build some amazing bridge.
Yeah.
And then, it was just a couple turns. This road,
I was hoping to see a substation. Oh, yay!
Yeah. Luckily, they used the little chain link. Harder to get your toes in there.
Yeah.
I think that was a nice off trail kind of way to get over the highway.
Are we still in Topsfield?
I'm not sure where we are, but yeah, we're headed on our way up to
Georgetown.
So looks like it's going to be a bit more rough from here, but we'll see if anything stops us.
And it was a bit more rough from here. As you can see, we went from, hard pack to kind of, a bit more of a trail. This is like somebody took a lawnmower through a big path. So here you see this big stop sign. Basically, there is somebody's property that is right along the trail, and it completely blocks off the path. So we had to go around through this arboretum, which was actually quite nice. And you might notice that it's all fenced off, and that's to keep deer out. So the good part about the Arboretum is that it does lead back to the main trail, going around that person's property. So I'm glad that the Arboretum was there. Otherwise, I don't know how we would get around.
And as you can see now, we're getting into even less like hard pack and more just like powerline trail, which again, with fat tire bikes is great.
Yes.
But it did get a little muddy. And it had been dry, which was good. If it had been more rainy, I feel like we would have had to maybe even stop sooner.
Foreshadowing for the other video. And you saw me having to go over like a little bridge.
Trail has definitely gotten a little more rough. We're seeing some mud puddles and also a huge puddle. Oh, see my bike almost completely annihilate me?
Yeah, one thing I want to mention is if you have a hardtail like I do, so that means no rear suspension, then you want to slow down on paths like this. Jesse has rear suspension, so he can kind of go 15 miles an hour, no problem. I think for me, like 10, 12 is much better.
Yeah, so we're approaching Georgetown now. It looks like it's going to get a little bit more marshy.
So this is definitely not stroller territory, but definitely fun for hiking.
Yeah.
And that was basically it for us. We went
Yes.
a little bit further, but then I think we decided, you know what, this is, we just don't know enough about this trail. So again, you will see this in a future episode, but we decided in a second or two to turn around.
Yeah. We got pretty much all the way to Boxford, which is very nice. It was, this part of the trail was actually pretty good, although you can start to see how it's getting a little bit less well kept, a lot taller grass and stuff like that. And right around here, we decided to turn around.
Yeah, technically we're on the Boxford Rail Trail.
So now
Back to Peabody.
And, if you want to kind of leave us off here, you kind of already saw all of this. We're just going in reverse now. But maybe you're headed in this direction, and this is the way that you want to see how to go. And everything looks different going the other way, if I'm being honest. So
It's true.
It does look really pretty. And this was a very pretty part of the trail.
I think what's important about showing you kind of every inch of the trail is to show you whether you would feel comfortable doing it. And like right there, we're getting stuck in some mud. So like, do you feel comfortable with that? Some people do, some people don't. But I feel like that's what's so important about this. You know who you're bringing along with you, and you know what kind of, whether you're walking or riding a bike. And so you know whether this is doable. If you're on a fat tire bike, I think this is all very doable. But like if you're on a regular bike, I think you probably wouldn't want this part of the trail.
And this is the exciting part for me because, while, this feels very much like the present and, 2023 just, kind of wrapped up for us. And this was part of our 2023 trip. it's going to be interesting to see how this trail evolves. I mean, will there be a bridge that goes over Route 95 to where we don't have to do this big loop that we're going to have to do in a minute? Will, there be an easement on this person's property to allow more bikers? I think that e-bikes are going to make a huge dent in trails like this, because I totally get it. Once you start to leave Peabody, who's going to be doing this on a regular bike? But these e-bikes with the fat tires, they just chewed up these miles. It was a very pleasant trip, this trip. We had a wonderful time.
And if I can advocate to you guys, if you're in your town and you're looking for something to do to keep busy and to stay civic-minded, join a group that's working on bike trails, because you're going to meet so many great people that way. And because, like Jesse said, e-bikes are becoming so popular, the biking community is growing because it's so much more inclusive now. People of all ages can join. You don't have to be just Lance Armstrong to be a biker anymore. And I feel like you're going to feel really good if you can even expand your bike trail a little bit.
And so you can see here again on this loop that we have to take around the highway, this is where it's hard for me to kind of recommend a family to do this sort of trip. There was definitely a lot more hills on this because it's not a train track, what used to be a train track. You have a lot more grade changes. And so, yeah, those windy roads we had to take to get around, might be the stop of your trip if you're with a family.
Keep in mind, we're in the middle of the day right now, so the number of cars on the roads were a lot lower. If you're doing this in the morning or the afternoon when it's rush hour, there'll be a lot more cars. This is midweek, so we're showing you what it looks like that way. If you're doing it on the weekends, a lot of these will be quieter because you won't have rush hour traffic, but you will then have the weekend traffic. So
you'll have more traffic on the bike trails themselves.
That's true.
And I just want to say, this was a really nice bike trail. It covered so many miles. So if you're looking for I have an e-bike now and I want to go a long distance, this is definitely a fun one. And this might be a good one to kind of establish what your range is for your e-bike. I know that a lot of e-bikes say that they have some range, and that may be true or that may be untrue. Having a nice, flat, safe place to ride your bike is good, so that way if you kind of overextend yourself, or rather overextend the battery, you can bike home on your own power without too much trouble.
And if you're wondering how to gauge how long your trip will be, it really depends on your style. My style is I love 13 miles an hour. I keep finding my speedometer at that speed. Slower than that, and you feel maybe like you're going too slow. Faster than that, and I feel like I'm not getting to take everything in. So yes. I seem to average about 13 miles an hour, if that helps you at all.
And another thing is we are speeding up and slowing down a lot in this video. I know it's hard to tell because it looks like we're going 130 miles an hour. But whenever we encounter people on the trail, I am always trying to slow down, get out of their way, especially with pedestrians, people walking around. I'm not trying to blow past anybody or zoom past anybody. Even though we're on e-bikes, we're trying to be, good members of the bike path community. And I encourage you to do that as well. And I will also say that being on an e-bike makes it a whole lot easier to slow down and speed up, because the motor is going to be doing most of the work. So when you slow down, you're not dreading having to pump to get all the way back up to your traveling speed.
And another point is a lot of people will say that e-bikes are really a cheat and that you're not getting any exercise, but look at our legs. They are pumping up and down. They may not be working as hard as they would be on a regular bike, but I would never have attempted this many miles on a regular bike. And so at the end of the day, it was a good workout for me.
And you know what? Let's say it was only equivalent to a 3 or 4 mile bike ride. I just don't want to go on a bike ride if I'm only covering 4 miles, because that's usually going to be 2 miles there, 2 miles back. Here was an interesting part. They were actually working on the trail, so we had to kind of squeeze by them. And yeah, this was just a gorgeous part of that trail.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was so nice. You see us just kind of flying through the woods here.
You also feel so connected to the geography when you go on a bike at these speeds. In a car, you just have no sense of distance or whatever. Here, you really do. You start to connect to what town am I in and where am I? And at the end of the trip, you kind of feel like you really went for an exploration.
Yeah, each mile you really get to absorb so much. And so I believe this trip was probably around 20 miles or 14 miles. And it just felt like, I don't know, it felt like a real adventure. And you can kind of see us coming into town here, and you see more people walking and riding their bikes around. The condition of the trail improves as you get closer to civilization. But again, I think all of this stuff is subject to change. I think that these bike paths are going to become more and more popular as people realize that they can take e-bikes to and from work.
You can see that I'm wearing a helmet that's lit in the back. I didn't see a lot of people wearing lit helmets. In fact, I'm usually the only one. I really recommend them. We use Lumos helmets a lot, and I think it's, they're a little bit more pricey than a regular helmet, but you have such high visibility even in the daylight. So if it keeps one accident from happening, you're glad you did it. Now you can see that we're coming kind of back into more civilization, more suburbia here, passing more businesses, and the hard pack was really nice for our bikes. I didn't feel any kind of difficulty at all on this, but I would say that you should check this out if you're on a thinner tire bike to make sure that you feel comfortable.
And so we're coming back to kind of one of the difficult parts of the trip, which was kind of crossing that major road and then skirting under the highway and having to, it's amazing going under that style of highway, how big it is.
It always feels easier the second time when you kind of know the lay of the land better.
Yep.
So it was fine. I mean, obviously you're crossing at crosswalks and there's lights and everything. It's just, again, with the young family, and you have to keep all your little ducklings in order, it can be a little bit more tricky.
Yep. And luckily we found the entrance to that bike trail. But again, these bike entrances are so small. So sometimes you might miss them.
Yeah, Jesse's really good at finding them.
Mainly just because I've done this trip in my head so many times. I was so excited to go on this bike adventure.
Little hack here is to put your cell phone mounted to your handlebars so that you can keep your map open when you need to. We generally have to stop every now and then and look at our phones, but it's nicer if you don't have to stop.
And here we are at that pretty busy intersection. I do think that this is a bit of a weak part of this trip, is that specific intersection. Again, though, I think it is doable because you're not doing 100 of them. You're just doing basically one there and one on the way back. It's not such a big deal. And here we are pulling back in at the Leahy Clinic.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And remember, your comments are what make this special. So if you know something about this ride that we don't, or a nice little restaurant to stop at or whatever, please feel free to comment below and let us know places that you'd like us to check out on our next adventures.
Thank you so much for watching. Now we adventure.